Masterpiece and flawed are two words that seem strange when placed together to describe something, but are more than likely the best ways to describe certain kinds of video games. Some use it for Tears of the Kingdom or Elden Ring. Some will use it for titles like Mario Odyssey or Mega Man X. But for this video, we're going to be using it to describe Final Fantasy 16. 16 was a game I was honestly really excited for when it got announced. I played the demo and absolutely adored it, and recently I just beat the game on stream while also dabbling in the New Game Plus's Final Fantasy mode on the side, and I have absolutely loved it. This game was an easy top 3 of this year so far for me in all of the games I played in 2023, on par with games like Ryza 3 and Tears of the Kingdom. But I would be lying if I didn't have some issues with this game, and we're going to talk about what was absolutely amazeballs about it, and what totally sucked ass. With that intro done, let's get into this. Alright, I'm glad I finally get to talk about this game and everything I love about it. I kinda wish I made this video earlier, not gonna lie, but hey, no time like the present, am I right? Anyways, let's do this. First off, this game looks absolutely incredible. You can tell they are doing everything they can to take advantage of the fact that this game is a PS5 exclusive by pushing the gameplay and graphical fidelity to a limit a cross-gen version of this game wouldn't be able to reach. I still recall how blown away I was at how breathtaking several of the set pieces for boss fights had looked. Some of my favorites were the Liquid Flame fight, the Titan boss, and without a doubt my favorite being the Bahamut boss fights. There were quite a few others, but I don't want to get into too many spoilers for this video since this game is still very recent, and I don't need people knocking down my doors to bend me over to punish me if they figured out I spoiled parts of this game. So, no spoilers. Plus, I'm not a guy who likes giving those out all that much unless I absolutely have to. Speaking of spoilers, how about we get to talking about the story? Now, when I heard that Final Fantasy was going for not only an M rating, but would be one of the darkest entries in the franchise, I had to admit I was honestly pretty worried. Was it going to be a deep, dark, and mature storyline? Or was it just going to be a giant festival of gore and F-bombs that was the equivalent of a teenager's belief that that's what a mature game was? Thankfully, 16 falls into the former category, as it handled the darker elements excellently. Nothing felt half-baked, and every heavy topic was treated with the respect it deserved. I don't think there wasn't a single dark, emotional scene in this game where I watched it and thought to myself, yeah, that could have been better. Really shows how much effort was put into this game's writing in order to make sure these darker scenes had actual weight to them. And seeing characters like Clive and Jill interact with these scenes and struggle with their own dark pasts made for some phenomenal character moments. Speaking of characters, I pretty much loved every single one of them. Every character's personality was well defined for them to either be as lovable or as absolutely hateable as possible. Every interaction between Clive, Jill, Torgal, and everyone else was done nice and well. They bounce off each other perfectly, both in and out of combat. Speaking of combat, how about we get to the single best part of this game? And that, of course, is its combat sections. Now, if you were around the fandom before this game dropped, you may just remember the fact that Final Fantasy 16 becoming an action RPG was a bit of a point of contention among fans. It got a little heated, and I may have made a 3-minute long video talking about how it was getting out of control and the sides harassing each other are both going too far. And now that I've played it, I can say without a shadow of a doubt, the way they handled the combat was downright awesome. It wasn't perfect, don't get me wrong, there are certainly flaws, but right now we're talking about what works, and a lot of it works very well. It's fast, controls incredibly smoothly, and becomes better and better with every single icon power you obtain. From the Phoenix Shift that allows teleportation straight to the enemy, leading to an instant return or entrance into combat, to the Garuda Claw that allows you to drag enemies over to continue combos, and my personal favorite, being Odin's Super Strike attack that gets stronger and more vicious the higher the level you bring it up to. And at level 3, it gets absolutely wild. As an added bonus to this, you can also swap between the 3 you equip instantaneously, so you can use whatever icon you have equipped with absolutely no delay whatsoever. It's badass as fuck. The game creates a combat loop where you never get bored with how many options you get. It's also improved even further by adding on the extra abilities you can unlock to further your combat potential, along with upgrading and mastering icon abilities that, when they're mastered, let you equip them to other icon states, which in turn allows for even more crazy combos. And we can't forget about the best boy Torgal himself when talking about the combat, as his inclusion is adding an extra layer of depth to it. He can join in on attacks to deal extra damage, launch enemies into the air that when combined with magic bursts can send enemies even higher, and then he can even jump up and help you attack the enemies while in the air. And he can even give you small health recoveries during battle. He's such a good boy. Yes, he is. Yes, he is. You had better pet him at least 25 times during the playthrough. If not, I don't know what's wrong with you. However, even with how awesome the combat loop is, it's got nothing on the absolute unyielding hype that was the icon fights. Battles where normal combat is tossed aside and both parties become the icons within to beat the ever-living fuck out of each other. And this is exactly where the game is at its best. Landing these heavy, brutal combos as an icon, combined with all of the intense QuickTime events, the absolutely insane spectacle that takes place. These boss fights are taken to new levels through it. These fights are on a level of both scale and hype that are on the levels of things like Metal Gear Rising Revengeance, Ashura's Wrath, or even Sonic Frontiers. Think of this same kind of hype craziness when fighting those bosses, but with a badass fire demon fucking up everything in his path. It's raw as fuck and a completely unforgettable experience, even on multiple playthroughs. It will never, ever get old for me. This is actually how Ifrit became my favorite summon in all of Final Fantasy, just because of this game. God, my blood still feels like it's pumping intensely whenever I remember the Titan and Bahamut fights in particular. It was easily the highlight of my playthrough, no doubt in my mind. It's elevated even further than that, thanks to Soken absolutely taking the greatest soundtrack I've ever heard and slapping it onto these battles. A great soundtrack is what makes anything that's awesome even awesomer. That's not a word, but roll with it, alright? Fuck you, I get to say what I want. And in Final Fantasy 16, the soundtrack elevates from something phenomenal to a masterpiece of fiction. Now, with all I've said, why am I calling this game a flawed masterpiece? Well, how about we get into those? Alright, we have tackled why I think this game is a masterpiece. Now let's get into the flawed part of my flawed masterpiece title. Now, for my first criticism, this game is way too easy. While the combat is inherently a lot, and I mean a lot of fun, it's hurt by the fact that this game barely offers challenge until, like the last 5 to 10 hours of the game. It's kind of disappointing that a game with such a deep amount of combat potential doesn't let you challenge yourself with a harder difficulty until you beat the game and unlock Final Fantasy mode. I've been playing that recently, and yeah, it's genuinely a lot more challenging. I get that they wanted to offer a harder difficulty as a cool New Game Plus reward, but they could have at least offered a more challenging difficulty right off the bat. Because of this, I'm not going to be surprised if some action game veterans are going to be upset with this. And I totally get why. This is mainly a problem I've seen with many modern day games, to be honest, and it's getting annoying to see. I want to challenge myself right off the bat sometimes, so why not just let me? I've been focusing too much on this. I need to get to the other issues. Another big issue is the pacing in the second half of the game. Now, this game's story is fantastic. I will die on that hill. Its characters, it's just everything about it is great. But man, its second half has some really annoying moments where the story just grinds to a halt in order to do something stupid like a handful of fetch quests, or to have to hear one of Vivian's long, slow explanations on shit that could have easily been tied to side content. And while you can definitely just go ahead and hit the skip button on the explanations from Vivian, you cannot do that for the fetch quests. So be ready to get back from an awesome boss fight and then just start tapping your foot wanting to get to something else while you have to go get like 3 pieces of cardboard or fucking whatever. Speaking of those, how about we dive into another problem, and that's the side quests. They are not the best, as most of them are pretty boring and tedious. A large portion of them boil down to go get me these materials, or something like go fight these specific things. Very generic side quest stuff. They do improve in the late game, thankfully, But my biggest issue with it is how they tie specific things, like being able to ride fucking chocobos to completing a side quest. Like, why? What's the point of doing something like that? Why turn a basic ass feature that has been in every single Final Fantasy game into a side quest unlock? It's annoying as hell and still baffles me that they chose to do this. Thankfully, the world isn't super huge, so moving around isn't a massive pain in the ass without it. But I really do think this should have just been let you have the chocobo ability already without the need of a side quest. There are some other minor nitpick issues I have, but you know, like I've stated before, they are nitpicks, like a no run option, or maybe one too many particle effects, and the fact you only get one limit break. I do kind of wish you got more than one of those. But those are incredibly minor faults that won't do a whole lot to change anything other than moving around a little better and giving you some more combat options in a game that already gives you dozens. Would be cool to see the game get updated to add those, but you know what? Who knows? It would be awesome. I'm just saying, Square. Well, we're finally at the end of the video, and while I did spend a good amount of time explaining my issues with Final Fantasy 16, no, without a shadow of a doubt, I absolutely thought this game was phenomenal, and would without a doubt recommend it to anyone with a working PS5. Or when it eventually comes to PC, if that happens or not, get it then. My final rating for this game is a very, very impressive 9 out of 10. After 16, I gotta say I'm very invested in where the series will go next. But for now, I've got other games to review and talk about coming up. So thanks for watching my review of this gem of a game. If you liked it, make sure to leave a like and a sub for more content. We're getting closer and closer to 500. Would appreciate the hell out of all you if you did it. When that's all, have a wonderful day, and I will see you all next time.